The smell hit me first, burnt flesh and expensive perfume. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, my duffel bag dropping from my hand with a thud that should have made her jump. But Tessa didn't jump. She stood in front of the vanity mirror, her back to me, wearing nothing but her silk robe pushed down to her waist. She was looking at her reflection, and she was smiling. A cold, dead smile. And right there, in the center of her pale back, were 14 perfect, circular burn marks. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your city or country. I hadn't seen my wife in 6 months. That's the life of a Navy SEAL. You disappear into the dark. You do the work that keeps the world spinning, and you pray that the home you left behind is still there when you get back. I had played this moment in my head 1,000 times while sitting in the back of a C-130 transport plane. I imagined the hug. I imagined the tears. I imagined the way Tessa's face would light up when she realized I was home 3 days early. I didn't imagine this. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. My eyes were locked on her back. The scars were raised, angry, and distinct. They weren't accidents. They were precise. Perfect circles, spaced out like a grid. And the one near her shoulder blade, that one was raw. It was fresh. The skin was still blistering, weeping clear fluid. Tessa. My voice sounded like gravel, foreign even to my own ears. She didn't flinch. She didn't scramble to cover herself. She just slowly pulled the silk robe up over her shoulders, tying the sash with deliberate, calm movements. When she turned around, her face was composed. Too composed. It was the face of a soldier who had just walked through a minefield and was trying to convince their commanding officer they were fine. "Hunter," she said softly. "You're early." "What is that?" I pointed a trembling finger at her shoulder. "On your back." "What the hell is that?" She walked toward me, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. She reached up and placed a hand on my chest, right over my heart. Her hand was cold. Ice cold. "It's nothing. Just a dermatitis flare-up. The doctor gave me cream." "Don't lie to me." I grabbed her wrist, gentle but firm. "I've seen burns, Tessa. I've seen what heated metal does to human skin. I've seen what cigarettes do. Who did that to you?" She pulled her hand away, and for a split second, the mask slipped. I saw terror in her green eyes, a deep, primal fear that made my blood run cold. But then, just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. She forced that smile back onto her face. It was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a smile that looked painted on. "You're tired, Hunter. You've been in a war zone. You're seeing things." She tried to brush past me to get to the bathroom. I blocked her path. 14 times, Tessa. I counted. 14 circles. One of them is fresh. You didn't do that to yourself. Someone is hurting you. Stop it. Her voice cracked, finally showing a sliver of emotion. Just stop. Why can't you just be happy you're home? Why do you have to inspect everything? Because I'm your husband. Because I swore to protect you. She laughed then. It was a hollow, brittle sound. Protection, she whispered, looking at the floor. Nobody protects me from the price of admission. The price of admission. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Before I could press her, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And then the landline on the nightstand rang. It was shrill, cutting through the tension. Tessa froze. Her eyes darted to the phone. "Answer it," she whispered. "You have to answer it." "Why?" "Because if you don't, she'll know you're here." I walked over to the phone and picked it up. "Hello. Hunter. Oh, my brave boy is finally home." The voice on the other end was sweet, dripping with southern honey and charm. It was Morgan, my stepmother, the woman who had married my father 6 months after my biological mom died of cancer. The woman who was the pillar of our community, the charity organizer, the saint. "I saw your truck pull into the driveway from the main house window. Why didn't you come say hello to your father and me first?" "I wanted to see my wife, Morgan," I said, my eyes still locked on Tessa. Tessa was standing by the window now, hugging herself, looking small. "Well, of course you did," Morgan cooed. "But family comes first, Hunter. We're having a welcome home dinner tonight. 7 sharp. Don't be late." And make sure Tessa wears that backless blue dress I bought her. It shows off her figure so well. My stomach turned. The backless dress. The fresh burn. We'll be there, I said, and hung up. I looked at Tessa. She was trembling now. She wants you to wear the blue dress, I said. Tessa nodded slowly. I know. She knows about the marks, I stated. It wasn't a question anymore. Tessa looked at me, and tears finally spilled over her lashes. She doesn't just know Hunter. She checks them. She inspects her work. My vision tunneled. The rage that hit me wasn't the hot, explosive anger of a bar fight. It was the cold, calculated fury of a predator. My stepmother, the woman who had taken over my father's life, his business, his home, was branding my wife like cattle. And she wanted her to wear a dress that exposed it, daring anyone to say a word. Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why do you let her? Tessa wiped her face, and that chilling smile returned. It was the scariest thing I had ever seen. Because, Hunter, if I don't let her burn me, she cuts the funding for Violet. Violet, Tessa's little sister. The one in the specialized neurological care facility that cost $20,000 a month. She said if I tell you, or your dad, or anyone, she pulls the plug on the payments. Violet gets kicked out to a state ward. She dies. Tessa walked over to the closet and pulled out the blue dress. So I smile. I take the cigarette. And I smile. Because it's worth it. I watched my wife, the strongest woman I knew, prepare to walk into a dinner party hosted by her torturer. I didn't say another word. I didn't yell. I didn't storm over to the big house and kick the door down. That's what an amateur would do. That's what a civilian would do. And Morgan would expect that. She would have a plan for that. I walked over to my duffel bag and unzipped a side pocket. I pulled out a small, black case. What are you doing? Tessa asked, her voice trembling. I'm getting dressed for dinner, I said. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a Navy SEAL entering hostile territory. The mission had changed. I wasn't here to just comfort my wife. I was here to hunt. And Morgan had no idea that the prey she had been playing with just brought a wolf home. I looked at Tessa. Put the dress on. We're going to dinner. And you're going to smile. She looked confused. Hunter, trust me, I said, checking the battery on the tiny recording device in my hand. Let her think she's won. Let her think she owns you. Because tonight, I'm not going to stop her. Tonight, I'm going to watch. I needed evidence. I needed to see the monster in the light. Tonight, I whispered, we let her dig her own grave. I watched my wife's hands shake as she tried to apply foundation to her neck, attempting to blend her skin tone to match the pale, terrified complexion of her face. We were in the bathroom, the air thick with humidity and dread. The blue dress hung on the door hook like a death sentence. It was backless, designed to plunge low, low enough that the fresh burn on her shoulder blade would be visible to anyone standing behind her. Let me clean it first, I said, reaching for the first aid kit I kept in my travel bag. Tessa flinched away from me, her back hitting the cold tile wall. No, no antiseptic. She'll smell it. Tessa, it's infected. The edges are red. If she smells the medicine, she'll know I told you. She'll know I'm trying to heal it. Tessa's eyes were wide, frantic. The pain is part of the lesson, Hunter. If I numb it, I haven't learned. I lowered the kit slowly, my knuckles white. This was worse than I thought. This wasn't just abuse, it was rewiring. Morgan had dismantled my wife's survival instincts and replaced them with obedience protocols. I took a breath, forcing my heart rate down. I had to think like an operator, not a husband. In the field, if you rush a hostage extraction without intel, the hostage dies. Okay, I said softly. No medicine. But tell me the rule. Why this one? Why number 14? Tessa stared at the sink. I forgot to forward an email, she whispered. The charity gala guest list. I sent it 2 hours late. She said tardiness is a reflection of poor breeding. She said I was embarrassing your father. For an email? My voice was flat, deadly calm. It's not about the email, Hunter. It's about control. She keeps a ledger. A little black book. Every time I slip up, posture, tone of voice, dress code. She makes a mark. When I get to 5 marks, I get branded. I looked at the scars mapping her back. 14 brands. That meant 70 mistakes. 70 moments where my wife had lived in terror of breathing wrong. Does Dad know? I asked. Tessa laughed, a dry, cracking sound. Grant, your father sees what he wants to see. Morgan tells him I'm clumsy, that I have skin conditions, that I'm mentally unstable and self-harming. She has a psychiatrist on her payroll who validates everything she says. If I speak up, I'm the crazy daughter-in-law, and she's the saint who takes care of me. She turned around and slipped the dress on. The blue silk slid over her skin, settling perfectly. And there it was, the angry, red circle of raw flesh, framed by the expensive fabric. It was grotesque. It was a display. Zip me up, she said. I did. The sound of the zipper was the loudest thing in the room. We drove to the estate in silence. The house, my childhood home, sat on a hill overlooking the bay. It was a sprawling mansion with white pillars and manicured gardens. To the outside world, it was the definition of American success. To me, tonight, it looked like a black site, a torture facility wrapped in ivy. I pulled my truck up the long driveway, parking behind a line of luxury cars. The family dinner wasn't just us. Of course not. Morgan loved an audience. Listen to me, I said, grabbing Tessa's hand before she could open the door. Her palm was sweating. Tonight, I am going to be the dutiful son. I am going to hug her. I am going to smile. And you are going to see me do nothing. Tessa looked at me, betrayal flashing in her eyes. Hunter, you have to trust me. I squeezed her hand hard. If I strike her now, she wins. She calls the cops, she cuts Violet's funding, and she paints me as the PTSD-ridden soldier who snapped. I need to know where the money is. I need to know where she keeps that black book. I am going dark, Tessa. Do you understand? I'm going undercover in my own house. She searched my face, looking for the man she married. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, good. Now put the mask on. We walked up the stone steps. Before I could even ring the bell, the massive oak door swung open. There she was, Morgan. She was 50, but she looked 35. Blonde hair pulled back in a tight, elegant chignon, wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that screamed old money. She radiated warmth, the kind that draws you in before you realize it's actually the heat of a fire. Hunter. She threw her arms open, bypassing my handshake and pulling me into a suffocating hug. She smelled of lavender and something metallic. Oh, look at you. So handsome. The uniform really does wonders. She pulled back, her hands lingering on my biceps, assessing me like a prize horse. Then, her gaze slid past me to Tessa. The temperature on the porch dropped 10 degrees. Tessa, Morgan smiled. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. You wore the dress. I wasn't sure you'd have the confidence for it. It's beautiful, Morgan. Thank you, Tessa said. Her voice didn't waver. She was good at this. Morgan stepped closer to Tessa, reaching out to adjust the strap of the dress on Tessa's shoulder. Her fingers brushed right next to the burn. I saw Tessa's jaw tighten, the muscles in her neck straining to keep her from screaming. And you're standing up so straight, Morgan cooed, her fingernail digging slightly into the skin just millimeters from the wound. Good posture is everything, isn't it? I watched. My hands hung by my sides, relaxed. Inside, my mind was calculating the trajectory needed to put Morgan through the stained glass window behind her. But I did nothing. I forced a grin. She looks great, Morgan, I said, stepping between them smoothly, breaking the contact. Where's Dad? Morgan's eyes snapped back to me, irritated that her game was interrupted, but she hid it instantly. In the study. Go say hi. I'll take Tessa to the kitchen to help with the appetizers. We have so much to catch up on. Separation. That was her first move. Isolate the victim. Actually, I said, draping my arm around Tessa's waist, deliberately covering the lower part of her back, protecting her. I haven't seen my wife in 6 months. She stays with me. Dad can wait 5 minutes. Morgan's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A glitch in the matrix. She wasn't used to being told no. Of course, she said, her voice tight. Don't be long. We have guests. Judge Miller is here. And the district attorney. She turned and walked into the house, her heels clicking on the marble like gunshots. I looked at Tessa. She let out a breath she'd been holding for a full minute. Judge Miller and the DA. I whispered in her ear as we crossed the threshold. She surrounded herself with the law. She owns them, Hunter. Tessa whispered back. She owns everyone in this town. Not me, I said quietly. I guided Tessa into the hallway. The walls were lined with portraits of our ancestors. But as we passed the mirror in the foyer, I saw my reflection. I didn't look like a son coming home. I looked like a ghost haunting his own life. I reached into my pocket and activated the app on my phone that linked to the audio bugs I had stashed in my jacket. I needed to plant them. I needed to hear what she said when the polite masks came off. Go to the kitchen, I told Tessa loud enough for the house to hear. Give me a drink, honey. I leaned in close, my lips brushing her ear. Drop a fork. Make a mess. Distract her. I need 2 minutes in her office. Tessa nodded, terrified but determined. She walked toward the kitchen, toward the monster. I turned toward the study, but as soon as I was out of sight, I veered left, toward Morgan's private sanctuary. The hunt had begun. Morgan's office was at the end of the east wing, behind a door most people assumed was a linen closet. But I knew better. I had grown up in this house. I knew every secret passage, every hidden room my mother had shown me before the cancer took her. Before Morgan, the hallway was empty. I could hear voices from the dining room, my father's deep laugh, the tinkle of crystal glasses, the murmur of polite conversation. I had maybe 90 seconds before someone noticed I wasn't in the study. The door was locked. Of course it was. I pulled a small tension wrench and picked from my wallet, tools every seal carries in some form. 30 seconds later, the lock clicked. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. The office was pristine. White furniture, gold accents, fresh orchids on the mahogany desk. Everything screamed elegance and control. But it was the wall behind the desk that caught my attention. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound classics. Too perfect. Too staged. I moved quickly, running my fingers along the spines. My mother used to have a hiding place behind the encyclopedia set. Morgan had kept the books, but rearranged them. I pulled on volume M. Nothing. Then volume H for Hunter. The shelf clicked. A small panel slid open, revealing a safe. Electronic lock. 8 digits. I didn't have time to crack it, but I didn't need to. I pulled out a micro camera, no bigger than a button, and stuck it to the underside of the desk, angled toward the safe. If Morgan opened it while I was gone, I'd have the code on video. I planted 2 audio bugs. One under the desk lamp, one behind the picture frame of Morgan and my father on their wedding day. In the photo, my father looked happy. Morgan looked victorious. A crash echoed from the kitchen. Glass shattering. Tessa had done her part. I heard Morgan's heels clicking rapidly down the hallway, moving away from me. I slipped out of the office, locked the door behind me, and made it to the study just as my father looked up from his newspaper. Hunter. Grant stepped forward, pulling me into a firm hug. He smelled like bourbon and expensive cologne. His hair had gone completely gray since I'd last seen him, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. He looked older. Tired. 6 months is too damn long, son. I know, Dad. I'm sorry. He clapped me on the shoulder. You look good. Lean. How was the deployment? Classified, I said with a grin. But I'm home now. Good. Good. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey from the crystal decanter on his desk. Morgan's been worried about you. She lights a candle for you every Sunday at church. I took the glass, but didn't drink. That's kind of her. She's a good woman, Hunter. I know you had your reservations when we got married, but she saved me after your mother passed. I was drowning, and she pulled me back. She pulled you under, I thought. But I just nodded. How's Tessa doing? He asked. Morgan mentioned she's been struggling lately. There it was. The groundwork. The narrative Morgan had been planting. Struggling how? I asked carefully. Grant shifted uncomfortably. Morgan says she's been forgetful, emotional, breaking things. She thinks maybe Tessa is overwhelmed with Violet's medical situation. She suggested therapy. Therapy, I repeated, my grip tightening on the glass. Just to talk to someone. No judgment. Morgan even offered to pay for it. She wants to help. I forced myself to breathe. Morgan was building a paper trail. If Tessa ever spoke up, there would be psychiatric records labeling her as unstable, unreliable, a liar. I'll talk to her, I said. Before Grant could respond, Morgan's voice floated from the doorway. Dinner is served, gentlemen. She stood there, perfectly composed, not a hair out of place. Behind her, I could see Tessa in the kitchen doorway, pale and shaking. Morgan's eyes flicked to me, then to my father, and she smiled that radiant, warm smile that had fooled everyone. Shall we? She said, extending her hand toward the dining room. The table was set for 12. Judge Miller sat at one end, the district attorney and his wife on the left side. There were 3 couples I didn't recognize, probably donors to Morgan's charities. And at the head of the table, the seat of honor, was reserved for my father. Morgan directed me to sit across from Tessa. Strategic placement. She wanted to watch both of us. As everyone settled in, Morgan raised her wine glass. A toast, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding a room. To Hunter, our hero, home safe from defending our freedom. And to family, the most precious thing we have. To family. Everyone echoed, glasses clinking. I watched Morgan over the rim of my glass. She was in her element here. The perfect hostess. The philanthropist. The woman who could do no wrong. Dinner began. Roasted duck, truffle risotto, imported wine. The conversation flowed. Politics, charity events, who was buying what property. I played my role. The quiet soldier. The respectful son. I laughed at jokes. I answered questions about what I could talk about from deployment. And I watched. I watched how Morgan's hand would casually brush Tessa's arm when she reached for the salt, her fingernails pressing just hard enough to make Tessa wince. I watched how she'd interrupt Tessa mid-sentence, correcting her pronunciation or finishing her thoughts. Small cuts. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Tessa, darling, Morgan said during the main course, her voice dripping with false concern. You've barely touched your food. Are you feeling all right? All eyes turned to Tessa. She was trapped. I'm fine, Morgan. Just not very hungry. You've lost weight, Morgan continued, tilting her head. Hunter, have you noticed? She's gotten so thin. I worry about her. Judge Miller's wife chimed in. Oh, my niece went through something similar. Stress-related appetite loss. Have you considered seeing someone? There it was. Morgan was crowdsourcing the narrative, getting witnesses to her concern. She's perfect, I said firmly, reaching across the table to take Tessa's hand. And she's been taking care of everything while I was gone. I'm the one who should be worried about her burning out. Morgan's smile tightened. Of course. I just want what's best for her. For both of you. We know. Tessa said quietly, that haunting smile creeping back onto her face. You've been so generous, Morgan. So caring. I felt Tessa's hand trembling in mine. The district attorney shifted the conversation to a recent case, and the attention mercifully moved away from us. But as dessert was being served, some elaborate chocolate mousse thing, I noticed Morgan stand and excuse herself. Just need to powder my nose, she said sweetly. I waited exactly 45 seconds, then stood. Restroom. I muttered to no one in particular. I followed her path, but stayed back, watching through the reflection in a hallway mirror. She didn't go to the bathroom. She went to her office. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket. The camera alert. She was opening the safe. I pulled up the live feed on my phone, angling it so it looked like I was checking messages. The video was clear. Morgan's fingers moved across the keypad. 62198724. The safe opened. Inside, I could see stacks of documents, a jewelry box, and, there, a small black leather book. The ledger. She pulled it out, flipped through a few pages, then returned it. She closed the safe and left the office. I had the code. I had the location. Now I just needed the right moment. When I returned to the dining room, Morgan was already back in her seat, laughing at something the judge had said. She looked at me as I sat down, her eyes cold and calculating despite the warm smile on her lips. "Everything all right, Hunter?" she asked. "Perfect," I said. As coffee was served, Morgan stood again, this time moving behind Tessa's chair. "Tessa, sweetheart, you have something on your dress." She leaned down, ostensibly to brush something off Tessa's shoulder. But I saw it. Her thumb pressed directly into the burn. Hard. Tessa's entire body went rigid. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped her napkin. But she didn't cry out. She didn't move. She just kept that broken smile on her face. "There," Morgan said, satisfied. "All better." She looked at me as she said it. A challenge. A dare. I smiled back at her. The kind of smile I'd given enemy combatants right before the raid began. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she had all the power. She had no idea that she'd just shown me her entire hand. And in 48 hours, I was going to burn her world to the ground. The drive home from the dinner felt like an evacuation. We didn't speak until we were 2 miles away from the estate, the glowing lights of my father's mansion fading in the rearview mirror like a dying star. "Pull over," Tessa gasped. I swerved the truck onto the gravel shoulder of the coastal road. Before I could even put it in park, she had the door open and was retching into the tall grass. I unbuckled and reached for her, my hand hovering over her back, afraid to touch her, afraid to hurt her more. "Tessa," she heaved, dry sobs racking her body. She pushed it. She pushed it right in front of everyone. And nobody saw. Nobody even looked. I pulled a bottle of water from the center console and handed it to her. She took it with shaking hands, rinsing her mouth and spitting into the dirt. When she looked up at me, the streetlights illuminated the tears streaking her makeup. The mask was gone. "I can't do this anymore, Hunter. I can't. She's going to kill me. Not all at once, but piece by piece." "She's not going to kill you," I said, my voice low and fierce. "Because we're going to stop her." "How?" She slammed the water bottle onto the dashboard. "Did you see who was at that table? The judge, the DA. The chief of police was there for cocktails before you arrived. She owns the system, Hunter. If we fight her, she'll bury us. And she'll destroy Violet." "Violet," I repeated. "Tell me exactly how she controls the money for Violet." Tessa took a shuddering breath. "My mother, before she died, she set up a trust. It was supposed to be for both of us. But Dad was grieving, and Morgan, she convinced him to consolidate the finances. She said she could manage the investments better. She got power of attorney over everything related to the estate, including the trust management. So she controls the purse strings. It's not just that. The facility Violet is in, the neurological center in Zurich, it's private. It requires monthly wire transfers. If a payment is missed by even 3 days, they discharge the patient. Morgan set it up, so only she has authorization on the account. She showed me the paperwork. If I step out of line, she makes a phone call, freezes the account, and Violet is on the street. "That's illegal," I said. "Fiduciary duty. Try proving it." Tessa screamed, hitting the steering wheel. "By the time we get a court order, Violet will be out of the program. Her progress will be gone. She could regress. She could die." I grabbed her hands to stop her from hitting the wheel again. "Listen to me. She wants you to feel helpless. That's how insurgents operate. They use fear to paralyze the population. But every system has a weak point. Morgan has one too." "What is it?" Tessa whispered. "Greed," I said, "and arrogance." We drove the rest of the way home in a heavy silence. But my mind was racing. I had the safe combination. I knew where the ledger was. But I needed more. I needed to know exactly how she was siphoning the money. If I could trace the funds, I could prove embezzlement. That's a federal crime. That bypasses the local DA and brings in the FBI. Back at our house, Tessa went straight to the shower. I sat in the living room, my laptop open. I plugged in the receiver for the audio bugs. Static. Then, a click. Wonderful dinner, darling. You really outdid yourself. My father's voice. Oh, Grant, stop. I just do what I can to keep this family together. Morgan. I put on headphones, isolating the audio. Hunter seems different, Morgan said. Harder. Did you see the way he looked at me? Like he was analyzing me. He's a soldier, Morgan. He's seen things. Give him time. I don't like it. He's going to be a problem. He's asking questions about Tessa. We need to accelerate the plan. My blood ran cold. Accelerate the plan? What plan? My father asked, sounding tired. Just let them be, Morgan. Grant, you know the foundation is struggling. The investments in the offshore accounts, we need liquidity. Tessa's trust has a maturation clause. If she's deemed mentally incompetent, the principal reverts to the estate. To us. I froze. There it was. The motive. It wasn't just sadism. It was theft on a massive scale. She was torturing Tessa to break her, to force a mental breakdown so she could legally seize the entire trust fund. Morgan, I don't know, my father mumbled. She's my daughter too, in a way. She's a liability, Grant. And she's draining our resources with that sister of hers. Think about our legacy. Think about what we've built. Do you want to lose the house? The status? Because without that money, we're underwater. My father was silent. A long, cowardly silence. Fine, he finally said. Just handle it. I don't want to know the details. I ripped the headphones off. My own father. He wasn't just blind. He was complicit. He was trading his daughter's sanity for his country club membership. I walked to the bedroom. Tessa was sitting on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a towel, staring at the wall. Tessa, I said, kneeling in front of her. I know why she's doing it. She looked at me, eyes dull. She needs you to break. I explained quickly. If you're declared incompetent, she gets the trust principal. She's broke, Tessa, or close to it. They're stealing your money to fund their lifestyle, and they need the rest of it to cover their debts. Tessa's mouth opened slightly. Broke? But the galas, the cars, the vacations. It's a Ponzi scheme. And you're the bank. A flicker of anger sparked in her eyes. Good. Anger was useful. Fear was paralyzing, but anger was fuel. So what do? She asked. We stop playing defense, I said. Tomorrow, I'm going to make a call to a friend of mine. He's a forensic accountant. Used to work for the Treasury Department, hunting terrorist financing. We're going to follow the money. And what do? You continue to smile, I said. But not because you're scared. You smile because you know something she doesn't. You smile because you know the clock is ticking for her. The next morning, I was up before dawn. I made the call from a burner phone I bought at a gas station 3 towns over. My friend, Ghost, picked up on the second ring. Long time, Hunter, his digitally altered voice said. I need a trace. Cayman Islands routing numbers. Shell corporations. Send me the data. I sent him the screenshots I'd taken from the video feed of the ledger. It wasn't much, but it had account numbers. Give me 24 hours, Ghost said. I hung up and went back inside. Tessa was in the kitchen, making coffee. She was wearing a high-necked sweater, covering every inch of skin. She called. Tessa said without turning around. Who? Morgan. She wants to meet for lunch. Just us girls. She said she has a peace offering for the tension last night. It's a trap, I said immediately. I know, Tessa turned. Her face was pale, but her jaw was set. But if I don't go, she'll punish Violet. And, if you need 24 hours for your friend to find the money, I need to buy us time. I need to keep her calm. Tessa, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do, she said. I've been a victim for 3 years, Hunter. Today I'm an operative. Isn't that what you called me? I looked at her. The fear was still there, but something else had hardened around it. Resolve. Okay, I said. But you're not going in blind. I'm wiring you. I taped a flat, high-fidelity recorder to the inside of her bra. If she threatens you, if she admits to anything about the money or Violet, we have it on tape. But Tessa, do not let her touch you. If she tries anything, you leave. Scream, flip the table, I don't care. You get out. I'll be fine, she said, pulling her sweater down. She won't try anything in a public restaurant. She was wrong. We underestimated how desperate Morgan was. 2 hours later, I sat in my truck across the street from the Gilded Lily, the most expensive bistro in town. I watched through binoculars as Tessa sat on the patio. Morgan arrived 10 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf. I couldn't hear them. The recorder was passive, not a live wire, but I could read the body language. Morgan was talking fast, leaning in. Tessa was nodding, sipping her tea. Then, the waiter brought a fresh pot of boiling water for the tea. He set it down between them. I saw Morgan reach for the pot. She didn't grab the handle. She swiped her hand sideways, accidentally, knocking the pot over. The boiling water cascaded directly into Tessa's lap. I saw Tessa scream before I heard it. She leaped up, clawing at her thighs. The steam rose in a cloud. Morgan stood up, hands over her mouth in mock horror, shouting for help. "Oh my God! You clumsy girl! Look what you've done!" I was out of the truck and running across 4 lanes of traffic before my brain even processed the danger. It wasn't an accident. It was a burn. Number 15. Public. Humiliating. And disguised as Tessa's own incompetence. Morgan wasn't just greedy. She was escalating. And she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had hurt my wife while I was watching. I hit the patio railing like a battering ram, vaulting over it in one fluid motion. The bistro was in chaos. Patrons were standing, gasping, phones out recording the drama. Tessa was doubled over, clutching her soaked jeans, her face contorted in silent agony. Steam was still rising from the fabric. "Get back," I roared, shoving a waiter aside who was uselessly flapping a napkin at her. I reached Tessa and didn't hesitate. "I've got you." I scooped her up into my arms. Her skin was radiating heat through her clothes. "Hunter." Morgan's voice cut through the noise, shrill and performative. "Thank God you're here." She just knocked it right over. I tried to catch it, but she was so shaky, so unstable. I froze. I turned slowly to face her, Tessa whimpering in my arms. Morgan stood there, clutching her pearls, playing the terrified mother perfectly. But her eyes were dead. There was no panic in them, only satisfaction. She looked at me, and for a split second, she smirked. A tiny, imperceptible twitch of the lips. "She wants a reaction," my training screamed. "She wants you to hit her." To scream. To look like the violent, unhinged soldier. If I hit her now, I'd go to jail. Tessa would be left alone with this monster. I swallowed the rage. I swallowed it down so deep it burned worse than the water. "Get away from us," I said. My voice was low, terrifyingly calm. It wasn't a shout. It was a command from a man who had ended lives for less. The color drained from Morgan's face. She took a step back. I carried Tessa to the truck, ignoring the whispers, the staring eyes. I sped to the nearest urgent care, calling ahead on Bluetooth. 2nd-degree burns, the doctor told me an hour later. Upper thighs. We've treated the area, applied silver sulfadiazine, and wrapped it. She's lucky she was wearing thick denim, or it would have been 3rd degree. It will scar, but she'll heal. I sat by Tessa's bed in the recovery room. She was sedated, finally sleeping. The recorder I'd taped to her was sitting on the side table. I had already listened to it. The audio was damning, but subtle. "Morgan, you know, Tessa, accidents happen when people lose focus. Maybe if you signed the papers transferring the trust management fully to me, you wouldn't be so jittery." Sound of pot scraping. Splash. Scream. "Morgan, oh, look what you did." It was circumstantial. A lawyer could argue it was just bad timing. It wasn't the smoking gun I needed. My phone buzzed. "Ghost. I found it," he said without preamble. "But Hunter, you're not going to believe this. Try me. The shell companies receiving the money from Tessa's trust, they aren't just for lifestyle. They're funneling cash into a private account in the Cayman Islands under the name M. Vaughter." "Vaughter?" I asked. "Morgan's maiden name is Sinclair." "That's just it. Morgan Sinclair doesn't exist before 1995. No birth certificate, no school records. She popped into existence in Florida 30 years ago." I stood up, pacing the small room. Then who is she? I ran facial recognition against cold case databases. It took a while, but I got a hit. Her real name is Meredith Vaughter. She was a nurse in Ohio in the late 80s. She was investigated for Angel of Mercy killings, elderly patients dying suspiciously fast after changing their wills. She was never charged due to lack of evidence, but she skipped town right after. The room spun. My mother's cancer had been aggressive, yes. But the end had come so fast. And Morgan, Meredith, had been the private nurse my father hired for home care in the final weeks. She killed my mother. I whispered. It wasn't a question. I can't prove that, Ghost said quickly. But there's more. The M. Vaughter account? It's linked to a recurring payment for a storage unit in a town 2 hours north of you. Paid in cash until last year, now auto-drafted. What's in the unit? No idea. But if she's kept it for 30 years, it's leverage. Or trophies. Send me the address. I hung up and looked at Tessa. She was still sleeping, her face pale but peaceful for the first time in days. I couldn't leave her alone. Not now. I called my old platoon sergeant, Brick. He lived an hour away, ran a private security firm. Brick, I need a babysitter. Armed. 24/7. No one gets in or out of this hospital room without my say-so. Especially not a woman named Morgan. I'm already in the car, Brick growled. You sounded like you were in the sandbox again. I am, I said. When Brick arrived, he looked like a vending machine with a beard. He took up position outside the door, arms crossed. Go do what you gotta do, Lieutenant. She's safe. I drove north. The rage was gone now, replaced by a cold, mechanical focus. I was dismantling a target. The storage facility was a rundown place behind a scrapyard. The unit, number 404, was rusted shut. I cut the lock with bolt cutters I bought at a hardware store. The door rolled up with a screech. Inside, it smelled of dust and old secrets. Boxes stacked to the ceiling. I started opening them. Old nursing uniforms. ID badges with different names. And then, a box marked trophies. I opened it. Inside were jewelry boxes. I recognized a brooch. It was Mrs. Gable's, an old neighbor of ours who died suddenly 5 years ago. Morgan had comforted her widower for months. And at the bottom of the box, a file. Project, Grant my father. I opened it. It was a timeline, dating back to when my mother was first diagnosed. Notes on her medication. Notes on my father's net worth. Notes on me. Son is a problem. Will likely enlist. Good. Keeps him away. And then, a page dedicated to Tessa. Weak. Malleable. Father's guilt will make him protect her financially. Isolate her. Break her. Assume control of assets. There were photos of Tessa. Photos taken from inside our house, before we even knew Morgan had keys. This wasn't just a con. This was a long-game infiltration. Morgan was a parasite who had hollowed out my family from the inside. But then I found the kicker. A medical file. Violet. Patient ID 8922. I flipped through it. It was correspondence with a doctor in Zurich. Regarding the patient's condition, the current medication regimen is inducing lethargy and cognitive decline. If we stop the supplements you are sending, she would likely show marked improvement within weeks. Morgan wasn't just paying for Violet's care. She was paying a corrupt doctor to keep Violet sick, to keep Tessa desperate, to keep the leverage. I slammed the file shut. The sound echoed in the metal box like a gunshot. I had her. I had the identity theft. I had the fraud. I had the medical malpractice. I had the motive for murder, even if I couldn't prove the act itself yet. But I couldn't just arrest her. That was too easy. She'd lawyer up. She'd hide assets. She'd claim insanity. No, I needed to destroy her. I needed to strip her of everything she valued. Her reputation, her money, her freedom. I needed to peel her face off in front of the world. My phone rang. It was Tessa. She was awake. Hunter. Her voice was groggy. I'm here, baby. I'm coming back. She's here. Tessa whispered, panic spiking in her voice. Morgan is here. She's in the waiting room. Brick won't let her in, but she's screaming that you kidnapped me. She has the police with her. Put Brick on. A scuffling sound, Then Brick's gruff voice. LT, we got a situation. Local PD. They're saying they have a wellness check order signed by a judge. Judge Miller. Of course. Stall them, I said, throwing the box of evidence into my truck. Do not let them take her. If they breach that door, it's an act of war. Understood. How far out are you? 90 minutes. But Brick, tell the cops one thing for me. What's that? Tell them the Navy SEAL husband is coming. And he's bringing the truth. I peeled out of the lot, gravel spraying. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of blood and bruises. The game had changed. Morgan had played her trump card, the law, but she didn't know I was holding the entire deck. I broke every speed limit getting back to the hospital, the box of evidence rattling in the passenger seat like a cage full of angry hornets. My mind was a tactical map, plotting moves and countermoves. Morgan had brought the police. She had brought a judge's order. She was trying to extract Tessa, likely to commit her to a psychiatric facility under emergency protocols. If she succeeded, she'd control Tessa, the trust, and the narrative. I couldn't let that happen. When I sprinted into the hospital lobby, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Two uniformed officers were arguing with Brick, who stood like a stone wall in front of the elevators. Morgan was there, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief, playing the distraught mother to a small audience of nurses. He's unstable. Morgan was sobbing to a sergeant I recognized, Officer Davis, a man who had been to my father's barbecues. He dragged her out of the restaurant. She needs professional help, not to be held hostage by a man with PTSD. Officer Davis, I boomed, my voice cutting through her performance. The lobby went silent. Morgan spun around. For a microsecond, genuine fear flickered in her eyes before the mask slammed back down. Hunter. She rushed toward me, arms outstretched. Thank God. Tell these men to let me see Tessa. We need to get her to the clinic. Dr. Evans is waiting. Dr. Evans. Her pet psychiatrist. I sidestepped her hug, moving straight to Davis. Officer, my wife is a grown woman. She is conscious, lucid, and she does not want to see her stepmother. Unless you have a warrant for her arrest, you have no right to move her. Davis looked uncomfortable. Hunter, look. Judge Miller signed a temporary guardianship order. Based on the incident at the restaurant, self-harm, public disturbance, it looks like she's a danger to herself. Self-harm. I let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. She poured boiling water on my wife. I pointed at Morgan. That's a lie. Morgan gasped, clutching her chest. She knocked it over. She was shaking. Ask anyone. I have evidence, I said, bluffing slightly. The audio was weak, but the box in my truck was strong. And I have a lawyer on the way. I didn't have a lawyer on the way, but I needed them to pause. Hunter, Morgan's voice dropped, becoming sickly sweet. Don't make this harder. Think of your father. He's devastated. He agreed this is for the best. Dad. She had turned him. Or maybe he was just too weak to fight her. I'm going up to see my wife, I said to Davis. If you try to stop me, you better call for backup. A lot of it. Davis hesitated. He looked at Brick, then at me. 2 combat veterans versus 2 small-town cops. He made the smart choice. 5 minutes, Davis said, to calm her down. Then we have to execute the order. I pushed past Morgan. As I did, I leaned in close. I found the storage unit, Meredith. She froze. Statuesque. Total paralysis. I didn't wait for a reaction. I got into the elevator with Brick. Good work, I told him. She's a witch, LT, Brick grunted. She tried to bribe me. Offered me 10 grand to take a coffee break. She's scared. We burst into Tessa's room. She was sitting up, terrified, clutching the bed sheets. They're going to take me, she whispered. I heard them. No, they're not, I said, locking the door. I went to the window. 3rd floor. There was a fire escape landing 10 feet down and 5 feet over. Doable. Tessa, can you walk? It hurts, but yes. Good. We're leaving. The unorthodox way. What? If you go with them, they lock you up. They drug you. You lose the trust. Violet dies. I grabbed her face gently. Do you trust me? Yes. Then we run. I helped her into her clothes, wincing as she hissed in pain. I strapped the evidence box to my back. Brick helped us out the window. I'll hold the door, Brick said with a grin. It might take them a while to get through. We scrambled down the fire escape into the alley. My truck was compromised. They'd be looking for it. We needed a ghost car. We ran 2 blocks to a rental lot. I hot-wired an old sedan, a skill I picked up in places that don't exist on maps. We were on the highway before Davis even breached the hospital room door. Where are we going? Tessa asked, watching the city lights fade. Safe house. A cabin my buddy owns in the mountains. Off-grid. We drove in silence for an hour. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the throbbing reality of our situation. We were fugitives. Kidnapping charges would be filed by morning. Hunter, Tessa said softly. You said you found something. In the storage unit. You called her Meredith. I took a breath. Morgan isn't Morgan. She's Meredith Vodder, a nurse who kills patients for their money. She killed my mom, Tessa. Tessa covered her mouth, tears welling up. Oh my God. Hunter. And Violet. She's not sick. Not really. Morgan is paying the doctor to poison her. To keep her weak so you stay compliant. Tessa screamed. It was a raw, animal sound of pure grief and rage. She punched the dashboard, sobbing. My sister. My baby sister. For 3 years. We're going to save her, I promised. But first, we have to kill Morgan. Not her body. Her life. We arrived at the cabin at 3 a.m. No internet. No cell service. Just us and the evidence. I spent the next 2 days building the case. I scanned every document from the box. I linked the payments. I built a timeline that was irrefutable. But I was missing one thing. A confession. A direct link to the current crimes. The documents proved past sins, but a good lawyer could argue they were forged or irrelevant to the guardianship case. I needed her to admit it. We have to go back, Tessa said on the 3rd morning. She was standing on the porch, watching the sunrise. She looked different. The fear was gone. In its place was something cold and sharp. It's too dangerous, I said. There's an APB out for us. Tomorrow night, she said, turning to me. The charity gala. The masked ball for the children's hospital. So, Morgan is the chairwoman. It's her biggest night of the year. The governor will be there. The press. Everyone. Tessa, if we walk in there, we get arrested. Not if we change the narrative first, she said. She wants to brand me? She wants to peel my face off? Fine. Let's peel hers off instead. In front of the whole world. She walked over to the table where I had the evidence spread out. She picked up the photo of Violet. I have an idea, she said. But you have to trust me. I have to go in alone. Absolutely not. Hunter, she won't confess to you. You're the threat. She'll confess to me. Because she thinks I'm broken. She thinks I'm weak. I'm the bait. I looked at my wife. She wasn't the trembling victim anymore. She was a soldier volunteering for a suicide mission. It's too risky, I argued. She burned me 15 times, Hunter. She stole my life. She's killing my sister. I am not hiding in the woods while she drinks champagne. I want her to look me in the eye when she falls. She was right. It was the only way. Okay, I said. But we do it my way. We don't just walk in. We infiltrate. I pulled out a map of the hotel ballroom where the gala was being held. We need gear, I said. Microtransmitters. A signal jammer to stop her from calling security. And we need a way to hijack the AV system. Can you do that? I'm a SEAL, Tessa. Disruption is my specialty. We spent the rest of the day planning. It was elaborate. It was dangerous. It relied on split-second timing. But then, the twist hit us. I was going through the last of the papers in the project grant file. A loose sheet fell out. It was a DNA test result, dated 2 years ago. Subject, Tessa subject. Grant result, 0% match. I stared at the paper. The world stopped. Tessa, I choked out. She came over. What? I handed her the paper. She's not just stealing your money, I said, my voice shaking. She's blackmailing Dad. He's not your biological father. Your mom had an affair. Morgan found out. That's why Dad is so compliant. That's why he lets her hurt you. She's threatening to reveal the secret that would destroy his reputation and invalidate his claim to the estate if your moms had a paternity clause. Tessa stared at the paper. Her entire identity, her connection to the man who raised her, shattered in an instant. He knows, she whispered. He knows she's torturing me, and he lets her do it to save his reputation? He's not a victim, I said, realizing the full horror of it. He's a co-conspirator. Tessa looked up. Her eyes were dry. They were black holes. Then they both burn, she said. She picked up a lighter from the table, flicked it on. The flame danced in her eyes. Hunter, she said, get the car. We have a ball to crash. The gala was held at the Grand Sterling Hotel, a monolith of glass and light in the city center. From our vantage point in a parked van 2 streets over, I could see the line of limousines snaking toward the entrance. It was a parade of wealth and ignorance. Inside, Morgan was holding court, likely accepting donations for a charity she was pilfering, while smiling that dazzling, murderous smile. Radio check, I said, adjusting the earpiece in my left ear. Loud and clear, Tessa's voice came back. She was in the back of the van, finishing her transformation. When she stepped into the front, I almost didn't recognize her. The wig was a sharp, angled bob, jet black. The makeup was heavy, contouring her face into something sharper, fiercer. But it was the dress that made my breath catch. It was a high-collared, long-sleeved gown of emerald green velvet. It covered every inch of skin. It covered the burns. It covered the scars. She looked regal. Dangerous. You look like a queen, I said. I feel like an executioner, she replied. She wasn't shaking anymore. The revelation about Grant, my father, her supposed father, had cauterized the fear. There was nothing left to lose. The plan is live, I said. I've spliced into the hotel's security feed. I've got eyes on the ballroom, the kitchen, and the VIP suite on the mezzanine. Where is she? Center of the ballroom, wearing red, talking to the mayor. And Grant. Bar. Drinking heavily. Good. Tessa checked the tiny camera hidden in her brooch. Let's go. I wasn't going in through the front door. My face was too known, too risky with the APB. I was going in as staff. A black catering uniform, a crate of champagne, and a stolen keycard I'd lifted from a smoking waiter in the alley 10 minutes ago. Tessa, however, had an invitation. Or rather, she had confidence. She walked right up to the velvet rope, flashed a smile at the bouncer, and whispered something about being a surprise guest from the Zurich Foundation. He waved her through. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and gowns. A string quartet played softly. The air smelled of expensive lilies and money. I moved through the service corridors, tracking Tessa on my tablet. She was a green dart moving through the crowd. She didn't hide. She walked with purpose. I see him, Tessa's voice crackled in my ear. Grant. Stick to the plan, Tessa. Don't engage yet. I have to look him in the eye. I watched on the monitor as she approached the bar. Grant was swaying slightly, staring into his scotch. Tessa stopped next to him. She didn't say a word. She just stood there. Grant looked up. It took him a moment to recognize her through the wig and the makeup. When he did, his glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the marble floor. He went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, to call security, to run. I didn't know. But Tessa just leaned in. Enjoy the drink, Dad, she whispered. It's the last one you'll ever have as a free man. She turned and walked away before he could react. He stood there, paralyzed, watching her go. He looked small, pathetic. Target acquired, Tessa said. Morgan is moving toward the elevators. She saw me. She's taking the bait. Get to the VIP suite. I'll meet you at the service entrance. Morgan wasn't running. She was following. Her ego wouldn't let her ignore Tessa's presence. She saw it as a challenge, a defiance that needed to be punished immediately. Tessa entered the elevator. As the doors closed, Morgan stepped in right behind her. Alone, my heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to meet in the suite, where I had cameras set up. The elevator was a blind spot. Tessa, she's in with you. I'm blind. I know, came the calm reply. I sprinted down the service hallway, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Inside the elevator, the air must have been toxic. Bold choice. Morgan's voice came through the audio feed. It was tight, controlled. Coming here. After everything. It's a party, Morgan, Tessa said. I love parties. You look ridiculous. Like a child playing dress up. And you look like a woman who's afraid her ATM is about to close. Silence. Then a low, menacing laugh. You think you know things, Tessa? Because Hunter found some old papers? You know nothing. You are a leech. A parasite on this family. I know about Meredith Fodder, Tessa said. I know about the nursing home deaths. I know about the poison you're feeding Violet. The elevator dinged. They were on the mezzanine level. Get in the suite, Morgan hissed. Now. I'm going in, Tessa said to me. I reached the service door to the VIP suite just as they entered from the main hallway. I cracked the door open a fraction. I could see them. The suite was lavish. Couches, a bar, a balcony overlooking the ballroom below. Morgan locked the door behind them. She turned to Tessa, her face twisted in a snarl. The mask was gone entirely now. You stupid, ungrateful little brat, Morgan spat. Do you have any idea what I've done to keep this family afloat? To keep your father's reputation intact? You mean his secret? That I'm not his. Tessa stood her ground. I know that too. Morgan paused. That shook her. She didn't expect us to know the paternity secret. So he told you. Morgan sneered. Doesn't matter. It changes nothing. You are still powerless. You are still mine. She reached into her clutch. I tensed, hand on my weapon. But she didn't pull a gun. She pulled a silver cigarette lighter. She flicked it. The flame danced. You need a reminder, Tessa, Morgan said, walking slowly toward her. Number 16. For crashing my party. For wearing that wig. For thinking you can fight me. Tessa didn't back away. She stood still. Do it, Tessa said. Morgan stopped, confused. What? Do it, Tessa repeated, stepping closer. Burn me. Right here. On the face. That's what you want, isn't it? To mark me where everyone can see. Don't tempt me, Morgan warned, raising the flame. I'm not tempting you, Meredith. I'm daring you. Morgan lunged. It happened in slow motion. Morgan thrust the lighter toward Tessa's cheek. But Tessa didn't flinch. She moved. Fast. She caught Morgan's wrist in midair. Morgan gasped. She tried to pull away, but Tessa held on. Tessa's grip was iron. The months of pain, of endurance, had forged something unbreakable in her. No, Tessa said. She twisted Morgan's wrist. The lighter fell to the carpet. You don't get to touch me anymore, Tessa said, her voice dropping an octave. You don't get to mark me. You don't get to smile. Tessa shoved Morgan back. Morgan stumbled, tripping over her own gown, falling onto the plush sofa. She looked up, eyes wide with shock. The prey had just bitten back. Hunter, Tessa said clearly. Now. I kicked the service door open. Morgan scrambled back against the cushions as I stepped into the room. I wasn't wearing a tuxedo. I was wearing tactical black. I looked like what I was, a weapon. Hello, Meredith, I said. Morgan looked between us. Trapped. But she was a survivor. Her brain was already working, looking for an angle. You can't hurt me here, she said, her voice trembling but defiant. There are 500 people downstairs. Security is outside. If I scream, I invited. Please. I walked over to the room's main console, the one that controlled the large presentation screen in the ballroom below. I plugged in my tablet. You like an audience, don't you? I asked. You like being the center of attention. What are you doing? Panic finally set in. We're starting the main event, I said. I tapped the screen. Below us, the music in the ballroom cut out. The giant screen behind the stage, which had been cycling through photos of smiling children, went black. Then, a video appeared. It wasn't the footage from the house. It wasn't the documents. It was a live feed. From this room. I pointed to the hidden camera in the corner. Smile, Meredith, Tessa said, standing over her. You're on TV. Below, the murmuring of the crowd grew louder as they looked up at the screen. They saw their beloved hostess cowering on a couch. They saw the unstable daughter-in-law standing tall. And they saw the Navy SEAL holding the remote. "Turn it off," Morgan shrieked, lunging for me. I caught her easily, pushing her back down. "Not yet. We have a presentation to make." I swiped on the tablet. The live feed shrunk to the corner, and a document filled the screen. The death certificate of my mother. Next to it, the nursing log from Meredith Vaughter. A gasp rippled through the ballroom. I could hear it through the floor. "Let's peel it all off," I whispered. For a second, the whole building felt like it stopped breathing. Down in the ballroom, hundreds of faces tilted up toward the screen. Wealthy donors, local power players, people who'd smiled into Morgan's cameras for years. Now they were watching her in real time, cornered in a velvet VIP suite, her eyes wild, her voice not sweet anymore. Morgan lunged for the tablet, like she could physically snatch the truth out of the air. I stepped sideways and kept one hand up, palm out, like I was managing a hostile interview instead of a battlefield. "Don't touch me," I said. "You do, and you turn this into a crime scene instead of a confession." Tessa stood between Morgan and the door, shoulders back, chin lifted. She didn't look brave in a loud way. She looked done. Morgan's face twitched as she realized the room had flipped. She wasn't the hostess up here. She was the exhibit. "You think this makes you powerful?" Morgan hissed at Tessa. "You think this little stunt changes the world?" "It changes mine," Tessa said. Her voice shook once, then steadied. "And it changes Violet's." At the mention of Violet, Morgan's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Your sister is alive because of me." "No." Tessa snapped, louder now. "She's trapped because of you." I scrolled calmly, keeping my thumb steady even though my pulse was punching at my ribs. The ballroom screen shifted again, still showing the live feed in the corner, but now displaying a clean timeline I'd built from the storage unit files and the account traces. Dates, wire transfers, shell companies, aliases. Morgan's smile tried to come back, like a reflex. It looked painful on her face. "Hunter," she said softly, like she was trying to soothe a bomb. "You're having an episode. You've been through a lot. You don't know what you're doing." "You're right," I said. "I don't know what you're doing." I tapped once more. A scan page appeared on the ballroom screen. An old nursing ID badge photo. The name on it was the one Ghost had found. I wasn't going to say it like a movie villain. I just let it sit there, big and undeniable. Morgan's mouth opened, then closed. Her throat bobbed like she was swallowing glass. Tessa stared at the screen, her voice dropping. "That's you." Morgan's eyes flashed toward me. "Where did you get that?" "From the life you kept," I said. "The one you thought nobody would ever dig up." From downstairs, even through the thick, sweet walls, I could hear it. Confused voices rising, chairs scraping. That special kind of crowd noise where people aren't entertained anymore. "They're scared." Morgan moved toward the balcony doors, trying to put distance between herself and us, like she could breathe again if she found air. She yanked the curtain back and looked down at the ballroom like she expected them to still love her. But love is fragile when it's built on a lie. She turned back with a new strategy, anger wrapped in authority. "Security will remove you," she said. "This is my event, my venue, my donors, and your screen," I said, "which now belongs to the truth." Tessa didn't move, but I saw her fingers flex at her sides, like she was fighting the old instinct to apologize. Morgan stepped closer to her, voice low and venomous. "You always wanted a mother so badly. You should have been grateful I bothered to shape you." "Shape me?" Tessa's laugh came out sharp, almost disbelieving. "You branded me." Morgan lifted her chin. "I corrected you." I felt something in my chest tighten, like my heart was trying to break a rib just to get out. Tessa's eyes glassed, but she didn't cry. 14 cigarettes, she said, each word clean and slow. Then the tea. 15. And you smiled every time I flinched. Morgan's lips curled. Because you smiled too. Tessa took one step forward. Not aggressive. Final. I smiled because I was trying to keep my sister alive. Morgan's gaze flicked to me, and I saw the moment she decided to pivot away from emotion. She wanted the system. The system always protected her. Right on cue, my earpiece crackled. Hunter, Ryder's voice said. Brick, the guy I trusted with my life. Hallway's hot. Hotel security is coming up with police. And Dominic is with them. Dominic, the district attorney. Morgan's dinner guest from the estate. A man who played golf with my father and pretended he didn't see bruises on women. My jaw clenched. How many? Enough to make noise, Ryder said. And I saw Grant too. My stomach dropped at the sound of my father's name. Tessa heard it in my face before I said it. He's here. He's coming up, I confirmed. Morgan's eyes lit with a nasty kind of relief, like she'd just been thrown a rope. Good, she whispered. Let the men handle this. Tessa's voice turned icy. That's your whole religion, isn't it? Men and money. I walked to the door and pressed my ear to it. Footsteps. Voices. A keycard beep. Morgan's tone sweetened instantly, loud enough to be heard through the door. Thank God. Officers, they've trapped me in here. Tessa looked at me, panic flickering. Hunter, it's fine, I said, even though it wasn't. We don't need to run. Not if we do this right. The door swung open hard. 2 uniformed cops stepped in, followed by hotel security. Behind them was Dominic in a tux, face tight, eyes already looking for the story that protected his career. And behind Dominic, Grant. My father looked like a man walking to his own funeral. His hands were shaking. His gaze landed on Tessa, and for a split second I saw guilt, so heavy it almost made him buckle. Then his eyes slid to Morgan, like he was checking if she approved of him breathing. Dominic lifted his badge. Hunter, he said, voice practiced for cameras. Step away from the woman. Now. Morgan pressed her hand to her chest, trembling theatrically. He's unstable, she whispered. He's been holding her hostage. And Tessa, she's not well. She needs care. Tessa stared at Dominic like she couldn't believe he was real. You're going to arrest us, she said softly. Because she told you to? Dominic's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, I'm trying to keep everyone safe. I turned my tablet so Dominic could see it. You want safe? Look at the transfers. Look at the alias. Look at the medical correspondence about Violet. Dominic didn't take the bait. He didn't even look long enough to read. That told me everything. Hunter, he said again, harder. You're interfering with an active court order. Judge Victor signed it. You're coming with us. Judge Victor. Not Miller. Victor. Same man, different name, same corruption. Grant flinched at the judge's name like it burned. Tessa's breathing turned shallow. I could feel her slipping toward that old fear. So I did the only thing Morgan never planned for. I looked straight at my father. Grant, I said, loud enough for everyone. Cops, Dominic, security, and the ballroom below to hear through the live mic. Tell them what she's been doing to my wife. Grant's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Morgan's smile sharpened like a blade. Don't, she whispered to him, barely audible, but I saw it. And Grant, my father, the man who taught me how to throw a ball, how to shave, how to stand tall, stared at the floor like a coward. Dominic stepped forward and reached for my arm. That's enough. Tessa's voice cracked the room open. If you take him, she said, staring at Dominic, then play the rest of the file. Play the part where she talks about Violet. Morgan's head snapped toward her. Tessa, you don't want to do that. Tessa's face changed, like something old finally died. Yes, she whispered. I do. I raised the tablet again, thumb hovering over one last upload. An audio clip writer had pulled from the bugs and synced to the Gallus sound system. Dominic's hand tightened on my sleeve. Don't. Morgan's eyes went wide. Hunter. Grant finally looked up, and in his stare I saw it. Terror. Not of me. Of what he was about to hear. The room was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the smell of sweat, perfume, and desperation. Dominic still had his hand clamped on my arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a lawyer. But I was stronger. Let go, I said calmly. He didn't. He tightened his grip, eyes flicking nervously between me and the open door where more security guards were piling up. Hunter, Dominic said, his voice dropping to a hiss. You're making a mistake. You're a decorated soldier. Don't ruin your life for a hysterical woman. Hysterical. That word was the trigger. I didn't break his grip. I twisted my wrist, reversing the leverage, and forced him to step back, stumbling slightly. You call her hysterical one more time, and I'll show you what a hysterical soldier can do. Grant, my father, made a small, choked noise. He was staring at Tessa like she was a ghost. Dad, I said, ignoring the cops who were now unholstering tasers. You have exactly 5 seconds. 5 seconds to stand up like a man. 5 seconds to tell them the truth about the money. About the blackmail. About everything. Morgan stepped in front of Grant, shielding him like a mother hen protecting a chick, but her eyes were pure malice. Don't listen to him, Grant. He's sick, just like his mother was. The mention of my mother hit me like a physical blow. But it wasn't pain. It was clarity. Play it, Tessa said. Her voice was steady as a sniper's aim. I tapped the screen. The audio wasn't just played in the room. It was blasted through the ballroom speakers downstairs, booming like the voice of God. Click. Static. Morgan's voice. It's not just about the money, Grant. It's about control. You think I enjoy burning her? It's necessary. Like pruning a rose bush. You have to cut the weak parts to make it beautiful. Grant's voice. But 14 times. Morgan. 14 brands. It's torture. Morgan's voice. Don't be dramatic. She takes it because she knows her place. And because she knows if she stops taking it, her little sister stops getting her medicine. And then poof. No more leverage. Grant's voice. What if Hunter finds out? Morgan's laugh. Chilling, high-pitched. Hunter? Please. He's a blunt instrument. Point him at an enemy, and he shoots. He'll never suspect the enemy is sleeping in the master bedroom. The audio cut out. The silence in the VIP suite was deafening. But the silence downstairs. That was the sound of a dynasty crumbling. Dominic let go of my arm completely. He took a step back, looking at Morgan like she was radioactive. Even the corrupt district attorney knew when a ship was sinking. Is that real? Dominic asked, his voice shaking. It's authenticated, I said, holding up the tablet. Time-stamped. Voice printed. And I just sent a copy to every major news outlet in the state. Morgan's composure shattered. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She lunged. Not at me. At Grant. She grabbed my father by the lapels of his tuxedo, shaking him. Tell them it's fake. Tell them it's AI. Tell them, you coward. Grant looked down at her. For the first time in years, I saw something spark in his eyes. Shame. Deep, burning shame. He gently, almost politely, removed her hands from his jacket. It's not fake, Grant said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. Morgan froze. What did you say? It's not fake, Grant repeated louder. He looked at the cops. She did it. All of it. The burns. The theft. The blackmail. Grant. Morgan shrieked, raising her hand to slap him. I caught her wrist before it landed. No more hitting, I said. No more burning. No more smiling. I looked at the police officers. They were confused, looking from Dominic to Morgan to me. Officer, I said to the lead cop, you have a confession from a co-conspirator. You have audio evidence of assault, extortion, and fraud. Are you going to arrest her, or do I have to make a citizen's arrest on live TV? The lead cop looked at Dominic. Dominic, realizing his political career was on the line, nodded slowly. Cuff her, Dominic said. Morgan let out a sound I'll never forget. It wasn't human. It was the sound of a demon being dragged back to hell. No, no, you can't. Do you know who I am? I am this city. I built this. As the officers moved in, Tessa stepped forward. She walked right up to Morgan, who was now trembling, her face twisted into a rictus of hate. You didn't build anything, Tessa whispered. You just stole the bricks. The officers grabbed Morgan's arms. She fought them, kicking and spitting. The elegance was gone. The poise was gone. All that was left was the ugly, raw truth. They dragged her out of the suite. We could hear her screaming all the way down the hall. My lawyer. Call my lawyer. Grant, You traitor. I'll kill you. I'll kill all of you. The door closed, muting the screams. The room was suddenly very quiet. Grant stood alone in the center of the rug. He looked old, broken. He turned to Tessa. Tessa. Tessa raised a hand. Don't. I was afraid, Grant whispered. She said she'd ruin me. She said she'd tell everyone you weren't mine. Tessa looked at him. Her eyes were dry. She was right about one thing, Grant. I'm not yours. Not because of biology, but because a father protects his child. And you let her burn me. She turned to me. Let's go, Hunter. We have a sister to save. We walked out of the suite, past the stunned security guards, past Dominic, who was furiously typing on his phone. We didn't look back at Grant. We didn't need to. He was already in his own prison. Downstairs, the ballroom was chaos. People were shouting, filming, leaving. The spell was broken. We walked out the front doors into the cool night air. The sirens were already wailing in the distance, coming for Morgan. But we weren't done. The airport, I said as we got into the van. Zurich. Tonight. We don't have passports, Tessa said. We left everything. I have a friend, I said, starting the engine. He owes me a favor. A big one. We drove toward the airfield where a private jet was waiting. It wasn't legal. It wasn't sanctioned. But we were beyond that now. We were going to get Violet. And if anyone tried to stop us, well, they'd have to go through a husband who had just peeled the face off a monster, and a wife who had walked through fire and come out smiling. But the real twist? The real twist wasn't about Morgan, or Grant, or the money. It was about what we found in Zurich. Because when we landed 12 hours later and stormed the clinic, Violet wasn't in her bed. The room was empty, except for a note on the pillow. Did you really think I worked alone? Emma stared at the note. Tessa collapsed to her knees. Morgan had a partner. Someone we hadn't seen. Someone who had been watching us watch her. The game wasn't over. It had just moved to a new level. And now, we had to find Violet before the partner finished what Morgan started. The note on the pillow was heavy cardstock. Cream-colored. Expensive. The handwriting was precise. Familiar. Too familiar. Did you really think I worked alone? Tessa was on the floor of the empty clinic room, gripping the bed railing so hard her knuckles were white. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. She's gone, Tessa choked out. She's gone. No, I said, scanning the room. My SEAL training kicked in, suppressing the panic. She was moved. Recently. Look at the force stand. I pointed. A bag of saline was still hanging there, half full. The drip chamber had condensation. They left in a hurry, I said. Probably when the news broke about Morgan's arrest. But who? Tessa stood up, eyes wild. Morgan is in jail. Grant is ruined. Who else is there? The M on the note, I said, picking it up with my sleeve to avoid prints. It's not for Morgan. I flipped the card over. Embossed on the back was a tiny logo, a serpent wrapped around a staff. The medical symbol. But twisted. Dr. Evans, I whispered. Tessa froze. Morgan's psychiatrist? He wasn't just her employee. I realized, the pieces slamming together. He was her architect. The one who validated your instability. The one who prescribed the drugs for Violet. He has her. And he's running. We sprinted out of the clinic, ignoring the shouting Swiss nurses. I called Ghost from the car. I need a location on Dr. Marcus Evans. Now. Way ahead of you. Hunter. Ghost's voice crackled. His credit cards just flagged a rental car at Zurich Airport. But he didn't get on a plane. He rented a cargo van. Where is he going? Heading south. Toward the Italian border. There's a private airfield in Lugano. If he gets there, he's gone. He has dual citizenship. We're on him. I drove like a madman through the Swiss Alps. The roads were winding, slick with rain. Tessa sat in the passenger seat, not speaking, just tracking the dot on my phone that Ghost had pinged. He's slowing down, Tessa said suddenly. He stopped. Where? An old industrial park. Near the border crossing. He's switching vehicles, I said. Or he's waiting for a pickup. We arrived 20 minutes later. It was a desolate place. Abandoned warehouses, rusted machinery. Rain lashed against the windshield. I saw the van. parked near a large, corrugated metal shed. "Stay here," I told Tessa. "Like hell," she said, opening her door. She had found a tire iron under the seat. She looked fierce, beautiful, and terrifying. We moved toward the shed. I could hear voices inside. "The payment hasn't cleared." A man's voice. "Evans, I'm not moving the girl until I see the zeros. Morgan's accounts are frozen, you idiot." A woman's voice on a speakerphone. I stopped. I knew that voice. It wasn't Morgan. It was Judge Miller's wife, the kind aunt who had offered Tessa therapy at the dinner. The corruption went deeper than I thought. It wasn't just a family scam. It was a ring. Morgan washed the money, Evans drugged the victims, and the high society wives provided the cover. I kicked the door open. Evans spun around. He was a small man, wearing a trench coat, holding a syringe. Behind him, on a dirty mattress, lay a figure. Violet. She looked so small, so pale. "Step away from her," I commanded, raising my weapon, a Glock I'd acquired from my contact at the airfield. Evans laughed nervously. He held the syringe over Violet's neck. "You shoot me, I drop this. It's enough potassium chloride to stop her heart in 10 seconds. "Hunter," Tessa whispered, terrified. "You're done, Marcus," I said, keeping the aim steady on his forehead. "Morgan is in cuffs. The police are tracking your phone. You have nowhere to go." "I have leverage," he screamed, pressing the needle against Violet's skin. "Let me go? Give me the keys to your car." "Okay," I said, lowering the gun slowly. "Okay, just don't hurt her." I tossed the keys on the ground between us. They clattered on the concrete. Evans smiled. A greasy, triumphant smile. "Smart boy." He stepped forward to kick the keys closer, momentarily shifting his weight. That was the mistake. Tessa didn't wait for a signal. She didn't wait for me. She screamed, a primal, war cry, and threw the tire iron. It wasn't an elegant throw. It was desperate. It spun through the air and smashed into Evans's shin. He howled, his leg buckling. The syringe flew out of his hand, skittering across the floor. I was on him before he hit the ground. I tackled him, driving my shoulder into his chest. I heard ribs crack. "That's for my wife." I growled, punching him once hard in the jaw. He went limp. I scrambled over to Violet. Tessa was already there, cradling her sister's head. Violet, can you hear me?" Violet's eyelids fluttered. She was groggy, drugged, but alive. "Tess," she rasped. "Why is it raining?" Tessa burst into tears, hugging her tightly. "It's okay. We're going home. We're going home." I zip-tied Evans's hands and feet. Then I picked up his phone. The call was still active. "Hello?" Mrs. Miller's voice asked tentatively. "Marcus." "Marcus is indisposed," I said into the phone. "This is Hunter." Silence. "I'm coming for you next," I said. "All of you. The judge, the DA, every single person who took a dime of my wife's money. You have about an hour to run. I suggest you start now." I crushed the phone under my boot. I walked over to Tessa and Violet. Tessa looked up at me. Her face was streaked with rain and tears, but she was smiling. A real smile. "We did it," she whispered. "Not yet," I said, helping them up. "We still have one thing left to do." "What?" "We have to finish the story." 2 days later. The courtroom. It was packed. Press, cameras, protesters. The Betrayal Stories Lab channel was streaming live. Morgan sat at the defense table. She looked haggard. Her hair was unkempt, her prison jumpsuit orange and ill-fitting. No makeup to hide the age, the malice. Grant was testifying. He had taken a plea deal. 5 years in minimum security for his testimony against her. But the real moment, the climax of the public peeling, was when the prosecution called their final witness. The state calls Tessa. The prosecutor paused, looking at the paperwork. Tessa Vance. Not Tessa Sinclair. Not Tessa Grant. Vance. Her mother's maiden name. Tessa walked to the stand. She wore a simple white dress. No high collar. No sleeves. The courtroom gasped. Her back was exposed. The scars were there. 14 circular brands. Angry, red, permanent. Morgan couldn't look. She stared at the table. Look at her, I shouted from the gallery, breaking protocol. The judge banged his gavel, but nobody cared. Look at your work, Meredith, Tessa said from the stand, her voice ringing clear. Morgan slowly raised her head. She looked at the scars. And for the first time, I saw it. Not regret. Not fear. Defeat. She slumped in her chair, shrinking. The monster had been reduced to a pathetic, lonely woman in a cage. Tessa turned to the jury. She didn't cry. She pointed to her back. She branded me to own me, Tessa said. But she just gave me the map to her own destruction. The jury didn't need to deliberate long. The gavel banged, echoing like a gunshot that ended the war. Guilty. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. Guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, extortion, fraud, assault, and attempted murder. Meredith Vaughter, formerly known as Morgan Sinclair, didn't scream this time. She didn't fight. She just sat there, staring at the empty space where her future used to be. As the bailiffs moved to cuff her, she looked back at the gallery. She was looking for someone to save her. She looked at Dominic, the disgraced DA, who turned his back. She looked at Judge Miller, who was currently under FBI investigation. She looked at Grant, who was weeping silently into his hands. Finally, she looked at Tessa. Tessa didn't look away. She sat in the front row, holding Violet's hand. Violet was still weak, sitting in a wheelchair, but her eyes were clear. The drugs were out of her system. She was coming back to us. Tessa offered no smile, no frown, just a blank, mirror-like stare that reflected Meredith's own nothingness back at her. It was the cruelest, most perfect goodbye. Meredith was led away, shuffling in shackles, vanishing through the side door. The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But for us, the sound was muted. We were already gone. 6 months later, the beach house was small, miles away from the estate, miles away from the memories of burnt skin and smiling monsters. The ocean breeze here was salty and clean. I sat on the deck, watching the sunset bleed orange and purple into the horizon. Violet was down by the water, walking, with a cane, looking for seashells. She laughed at a seagull, a sound that felt like music after years of silence. The screen door creaked open behind me. Tessa stepped out. She was wearing a bikini top and a sarong. For the first few months, she wouldn't even wear a t-shirt without checking a mirror. But today was different. Today, she had just come back from the city. Let me see, I said softly. She turned around. The 14 brands were still there. The scar tissue was thick, a roadmap of pain that would never fully fade. But they were no longer the focus. Covering her back, weaving between the scars, rising from the ashes of her skin, was ink. A massive, intricate tattoo of a phoenix. Its wings spread wide across her shoulder blades, the feathers vibrant with colors, deep reds, golds, and emerald greens. The bird didn't hide the scars, it incorporated them. The burn marks became part of the texture of the flames rising around the creature. It was breathtaking. It was defiant. It didn't hurt, she said, looking over her shoulder at me. Compared to what she did, the needle felt like a kiss. I stood up and wrapped my arms around her, careful not to touch the fresh ink, resting my chin on her shoulder. You beat her, Tess. You didn't just survive. You won. We won, she corrected, leaning into me. You came back for me, Hunter. You peeled the mask off the world so I could breathe. I'd do it again, I whispered. Every time. She turned in my arms and looked up at me. Her eyes were bright, the shadows finally chased away by the sun. What happened to the house? Grant's estate. Sold, I said. Every penny went to restitution. The rest went to a fund for victims of elder abuse and financial fraud. We didn't keep a dime of their dirty money. Good, she said. We don't need it. We have this. She gestured to the ocean, to Violet, to us. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had nightmares. I still checked the locks 3 times a night. Tessa still flinched at the smell of cigarette smoke. But we were free. The phone on the table buzzed. It was a notification from the channel. The story, our story, had hit 10 million views. People from all over the world were commenting, sharing their own stories of survival, of betrayal, of standing up to the monsters in their own lives. Tessa picked up the phone and looked at the screen. They're asking what happens next. I took the phone from her and set it down, screen side down. Next, I said, kissing her forehead, we live. Quietly, happily. That's the best revenge. We stood there as the sun dipped below the water, the darkness coming not as a threat, but as a rest. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. But somewhere, in a cold cell, I knew Meredith was staring at a concrete wall, tracing the ghost of a smile that no longer worked, wondering how the girl she broke became the woman who buried her. Some fires consume you. Others forge you. Tessa was steel now, and I was the shield. And together, we were unbreakable. A question for you. In this story, Tessa chose quiet revenge, destroying her